I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the meeting of the Engineering Equipment Committee of the Vallecitos Water District for Monday, January 11th, 2021 at 3 p.m. And at this point, I guess I'll hand over the items for discussion to the general manager.
Yeah, so Happy New Year, everybody. First meeting of the year. We have a really busy agenda today. We have 12 items. Some of them will be really brief, but some of them have the potential to go on long. I've asked staff to go through things as quickly as possible without rushing them. But if either of the committee members wants us to slow down and go deeper on any item, just jump in and let us know. And if any of you have time constraints and we have to go and you can't go past 5 o'clock, we can just place whatever items we don't get to on the next agenda. So if that's okay with the committee members. So
sounds good.
The first item is kind of generic. So we have the same two members of the committee, but we have a new chair, I believe. And maybe it's a good time at the beginning of the year to talk about how often the committee would like to meet, and are there specific topics that the committee would like us to address, or are there different approaches you want staff to take? So with that, I'll throw it over to Director Ellitharp and Director Hernandez to see if there's any frequency or work plan items you'd like to discuss.
Okay, well, I guess I'll take it first. I'd like to see meeting regularly. I'd like it to be monthly if possible, if there's enough items to support it, but maybe as a minimum every other month. And I guess as far as the items, I'd still like to see the development project and capital project updates, maybe focus in on specific projects, the larger ones particularly. I don't know, with that, I'll turn it over to Director Hernandez.
I think monthly meetings, as you indicated, Director, is perfect. We can let the agenda create itself, and if we don't have any agenda items and there's nothing worth updating, then we'll pass. But this way we can put it under our calendar and forever, and I don't have to worry about it.
Okay, well, we can go forward with that. We'll go with the presumption that there's going to be a monthly meeting. If there's no items, we'll cancel it. I don't know if it would make sense to put the development updates on every meeting. That may stay quarterly, but that doesn't mean we won't have meetings every month. And that may give us the ability to get information to both of you quicker and go deeper if there's items on the agenda. So do Monday afternoons work?
Yeah, I think they would work for me.
Yeah, me too.
Well, we'll do a standing, we'll figure out which Monday of the month works best, and we'll do it from 3 till 5 if that works for everybody.
Fine.
That sounds good.
Okay, well, that was easy. I was afraid that could be a long discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is not the finance committee.
No comment.
A little shot there.
Yeah, a little shot. All right, so item number 2 is a development update. I'm going to turn that over to James. And so those of you who don't know, Rob Scholl left the district. He went to work for Vista Irrigation District. So I think James will be picking up Rob's slack in the meantime. So Rob's last day was right around Christmas, right, James?
Technically, it was January 1st, but his last day in the office was the Thursday before.
Okay, so he's gone and we'll miss him, but he got a good opportunity that he jumped on. So we're in the process of starting the recruitment. So James, why don't you go ahead and give us a development update?
Sure. Okay, so let me share my screen. So you guys may remember this map, and this map it's hard to translate on a Zoom meeting because it's a large map. So I'm not going to go into every project kind of like Rob did. I will stop and focus if any of the members have questions. But really quick, as far as from a coloration before, if you see this green color, those are projects that are actively in construction. Okay. The blue color, sorry, the pink or the salmon color here, those are projects that are in plan check. Little ones here, Richmar area off of Mission. And then, of course, the light blue color, this is new ones here. Those are kind of planned projects that may or may not happen. As a reminder to the committee, projects that are in construction are certain. That means from a cap fee standpoint, we've either collected or going to collect it within the next year or two, 3 at most. The projects in planning aren't as certain. They're probably 3 to 5 years out, before they're in construction, most likely. Some of them are less, obviously, and some of them, like this one here, I'll zoom up on a little later, may or may never happen. And of course, the project in planning, those are beyond 5 years out to may never happen. Newlands here is a good example. They're more than 5 years out before they could do anything. So with that, let me zoom up on the table and just go over a couple projects. Okay. So here is the first project, so the construction. Really quick, the way this table is organized is we have the listing of projects that are in construction for our development services group. We have the proposed capacity fees. You can see we're proposing here a little bit over 3.3 million in water and 7.6 million in sewer. And then this next section is what has already been paid. So you can see in water, we still have almost $2 million to collect in capacity fees. But in sewer, we've collected the majority of them. And that's because of this project right here, number 9, Kaiser. Kaiser had 222 sewer EDUs, and they came in a few months ago and paid for everything. They paid all their water and all their sewer. So you can see across the board that they zeroed out, and they made the lion's share of the sewer capacity fee. And some of these other groups have paid capacity, like, for example, Discovery Village. They paid sewer capacity before we updated the cap fees ahead of time, and they knew the water wasn't changing much, so that's why they didn't pay water. So that's why you see some of these numbers will fluctuate like that. But you can kind of see here that we've done a pretty good year, especially with this is not an annual number. We're basically collecting sewer capacities, and we still have more water capacity fees coming in the next couple of years. On the planning side, these are projects actively in plan check. We have more than this in plan check, but these are the active developments in plan check. A lot of the other ones are smaller services or smaller projects. You can see here we have about $4.7 million in proposed and about $8 million, or is that 8 or 9? It's $9 million in proposed sewer. With that, you can see not much has been paid. And the main reason is the only really one that has been paid is this High Point project. The board may remember High development, the backside of Palace Vista or Emerald Heights, that went bankrupt in the recession. They had all their sewer capacity and water capacity fees paid. And you can see everybody else is taking advantage of, it's not time for them to pay yet. And then kind of the big pie in the sky numbers, all these planning projects. So all these planning projects that have water sewer studies, they have other activities that the engineering staff has worked on, but they have not entered into plan check. And you can see these are big numbers, 32 million and 53 million. But again, some of those will never happen. Some of them will get bigger. Some of them will get, throughout the planning stage, may become smaller projects. So those aren't certain. And what we do is we just shift the projects up from planning to plan check, from plan check to construction. With that, unless there is a specific development that the members have any questions on, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions from Director Hernandez?
No, I don't see, what were they calling that? Main Street Plaza?
Oh, Main Street Plaza. I think, let me see. I think that was a plan, but they never came forward to us. They've been working with the city, and
Yeah.
they've never actually come into us for plan check. So we had them on, probably if you look at a report from like a year or 2 years ago, they were on the planning side. They've never actually come in. So
Yeah.
I don't
Okay.
know if the city or not.
All right.
Okay.
Yep, that's all questions I had.
And
All right.
before we move to the next item, just an update on the Newland Sierra project. We did receive a letter from Rita Brandon from Newland Sierra confirming that we've stopped all processing of their project. As you know, there was a voter referendum and that project basically lost. So they're not allowed to move forward. And I don't know why Rita did this, but she sent the letter just confirming that we're not actively working on the project. I don't know if it's to make sure that they're not incurring additional costs or if there's some land development reason that they have to give notice to all the agencies that have approval authority over the project. But just wanted the board to know that we did receive that letter. I confirmed with James, and I'll reach out to Rita and let her know that we are not actively processing, nor will we unless they reinitiate with a new submittal. Okay.
I do have another question. Do we hear anything at all from Carl Strauss?
Yes, unfortunately, Carl Strauss has stopped their process at the city and not moving forward at this time.
Ah,
Do you know if that was COVID related, James, or was it just something else?
No, it maybe, I don't know. It happened earlier, I'd say middle to late spring of 2020. So COVID was here, but the full impacts we weren't known yet. So I got a feeling, they downsized that from a full beer garden restaurant to a brewing hub with outdoor seating where mobile food units could come up and either permanently park or they could have rotation for food because they weren't going to serve food. So they already downsized that quite a bit for originally, and then they just stopped the process.
huh.
James, I don't mean to surprise you with this question, but due to its visibility, as you drive along Las Posas, they're tearing down the old Elephant Bar, which was the Churrascario. Do you know what's going up in its place?
Yeah, it may be a Cane's.
Oh, a Cane's, Raising Cane's.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's it for item 2. And Director Elitharp, if you're okay, we'll move on to item 3.
Okay.
Okay, so I think, James, this is a discussion about direct potable reuse study. I'm going to turn it over to James, and James, if you need to turn it over to somebody else, go ahead.
No, I'm going to take this one. So Rob and I were working together on getting a scope and fee out for the direct potable reuse study. So what that is essentially is, what are our options at Meadowlark? How much direct potable would we be able to generate realistically? How much can we use? And what is not only the physical infrastructure that's required to build it, but also the regulatory hurdles? Because as you guys are probably aware, direct potable reuse is not legal yet. There are guidelines that have been basically put out by the state. But there's no actual active direct potable reuse projects going on. So where do we want to be? And this is going to be a further discussion. We're going to be working on a scope and trying to get grant funding for the scope, basically to do a study and probably to do environmental along with that study. The good news is our membership or our participation in the North Carolina Recycle Water Coalition is going to help us, because when we did the EIR for that group and the feasibility study, direct potable reuse for us was in there as kind of a placeholder with no details, but we could still use that document to tear off. So that's the good news. So we're not starting from the bottom floor, at least. The bad news is if we move forward, and there's going to be more discussions. This is something I want to bring back to the committee and probably to the full board in the future, depending on committee direction, is how much appetite do we have for direct potable reuse? We have to do a study, we have to vet out the costs, and there's going to be a scaling difference, right? It's not going to be cheap water, and depending on how much we have, there's some potential offsets. So in other words, if you have a treatment plant that produces water, you may be able to offset some of those costs by not building storage tanks, because you don't need to build storage if you have a treatment plant or as much storage. So those are some of those discussions that are kind of higher level discussions that we'll have both in the management group and with the committee, and I imagine with the board. Kind of along with that, but almost counter, is our recycled water contracts. Our recycled water contracts with Livenhain and City of Carlsbad expire in 2025. That's right around the corner, especially putting an agreement together with City of Carlsbad probably takes 5 years anyway. So with that, the more recycled water contracts we have, or recycled water MGD, million gallons per day in contract we have, then it basically is counter to doing direct potable reuse. So this will be more of a strategic level discussion. We are going to move forward. It's in the budget to do so, to scope it and get basically the committee up to date with the scope once we get that out. Our original plan was we were supposed to get that out sometime this month. Rob's not here, so I've kind of reset that. I'm hoping to get it out in the spring and hopefully have it to the committee and maybe to the board by the early next fiscal year or by the end of this fiscal year, if the direction is to move forward. And this is not a $100,000 study. This is a $450,000 type study, getting deep into what it's going to cost, what we have to build, what are the pros and cons, where the funding sources are of direct potable reuse. It's kind of that next level. It's not just a high level study. It's really digging down deep. We have some ideas from a staff level and management level, how it can be utilized and what the best options are, but we want that vetted out. With that, this is just a brief discussion. I want to introduce the subjects to the committee, get basically a high level understanding of where we are and what we're looking at. And at the same time, we'll be pursuing recycled water contracts, both with OMWD and with the city of Carlsbad. City of Carlsbad has already said they're interested in renewing the contract. They want to change it, but they want to renew it. Olivenheim's been more silent about it. So we know we're starting from that type of position where we probably have at least one customer that wants to and has huge infrastructure in recycled water that needs us because of our strategic location and elevation. We have another customer that has a smaller system that's maybe looking at shedding us as a recycled water purveyor. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, James, do we have in that study, will there be a storage component or a piping to to Mar Reservoir or even further to South Lake?
Yeah, so it depends. So for example, up at Meadowlark tanks, which are those tanks that are above the hill in Rancho Santa Fe across from Meadowlark treatment plant.
Yes.
Room for 3 tanks up there. We have 2. Originally, we were going to demo the small one and build 2 bigger ones. But if we have a treatment plant, we can maybe reutilize the existing tank. So we can have a fill tank on site, because with direct potable reuse, sometimes right now, the way the regulations state, you need a fill tank that takes 24 hours to fill. You need a testing tank that takes 24 hours of holding time. And then you have a distribution tank. Whether that's going to stick or get modified, I don't know. But based on that, we could probably reutilize that site because there's room for 3 tanks on that site. There's 2 of them up there already. And then we basically reutilize it for that purpose. Now, that's for a smaller system because the small tank's only 1.5 MGD. If we have a bigger system that's in the 3 to 4 MGD range, then, and we don't have recycled water customers, we have this huge reservoir called Mar Reservoir. It's 54 million gallons.
Right.
That may be able to be separated into different chambers. Obviously, that takes infrastructure pumping. We'd have to put a pipeline down the street to get there. Rancho Santa Fe is not an easy construction street. We'd have a pump station to distribute it out. So there's logistics of how do you distribute the water. One thing nice about getting it up to Mar Reservoir is from there we could feed the existing infrastructure into San Loyo Hills and over the hill into Lake San Marcos. The plumbing's already there. It needs some upgrading, and we probably need a very small, high volume, low head pump station to do so. So those things need to be vetted out with actual dollars and cost per acre foot. I could do it on the back of the napkin, but I wouldn't trust it at this point.
And Director Hernandez, I just want to clarify so we're all on the same page. This is a direct potable reuse study, not an indirect. So
Right.
Either Mar or South Lake wouldn't be used as an environmental buffer. They would simply be used to store the water pending its ability to be put into the system.
Right. I understood that. But and I'm wondering, we have piping from Meadowlark to the tanks presently, don't we?
Yeah, we do. You have the recycled water. We have from Meadowlark treatment plant to Mar Reservoir, we have piping. We do not have piping from Meadowlark treatment plant to the tanks, but we do have a right in Rancho Santa Fe Road that we could tie into. So at that point, we can get it up there and it goes into the system. However, if one of your testing tank or holding tank, it has to be a dedicated pipeline. So we'd still have to build a pipeline.
Yeah. Okay.
Because the other pipeline distributes into the system.
All right. Thank you.
And one other thing on this study, so James alluded to this, but I just want to clarify, it would probably look at 2 different size systems. One would be based, assuming that we are still in the recycled water business. So in those times a year when recycled water is in great demand, we probably would not be producing much or any direct potable reuse. But in those off and shoulder seasons where recycled water demand is down, that's when the DPR system would be running full bore. So that would be what I would call the smaller system. The larger system would be assuming we get out of the recycled water business. We're not selling recycled water to either Carlsbad or Livenhain, and all of the wastewater that comes into Meadowlark will be made into direct potable reuse water. And I think the dollar cost of those two projects on a per acre foot basis could be considerably different, because the infrastructure that you invest probably isn't that much different, but you'd be producing a lot more direct potable reuse water with the larger project. So you'd see two different prices per acre foot. There certainly will be some differences on the investment, but I think the study will help the board understand what's the overall cost and what's the difference, the magnitude difference in cost between the smaller and the larger systems.
All right.
Anything else you want to add to that, James?
No, I think you hit that on the head. We'll definitely be looking at least two options. There may be more that we haven't thought of, but the two options are we're going to scope, and we're going to leave the scope open if there's other options for the consultant to help us out with that.
Okay, Director Elitharp, that's all we had on that item. Anything else you want?
Yeah, just on the existing recycled water contracts with Livenhain and Carlsbad, refresh my memory. Have we gotten them along to where they're agreeing to pay the full cost yet?
Kicking and screaming, but yes.
Yeah.
So they're paying. So we do now have the full cost recovery. So there's all the capital costs are included in there, as well as the operations cost.
Okay.
You know, it's interesting. Carlsbad is by far the lion's share of buying the water, and they're the easiest of the two to deal with. The Livenhain, for some reason, are digging their heels in, and every time we bring up whether it's setting new prices or reconciliations or talking about new projects coming along, they're really, I would say they're on the fence as to whether they're going to keep us as a producer of recycled water or not.
Oh, I would have guessed it would have been the other way around.
Me too, you know, based on personal experience and just the fact that Carlsbad bears the lion's share of those costs. But we'll find out soon. Like James said, 2025, the agreements are done, and we're going to be starting this calendar year of coming up with new agreements. And that's one of the things we'll explain to them in conjunction with the direct potable reuse study is, I think it would be in Vallecitos' best interest to have the ability to discontinue providing recycled water at some point in the future. I don't think the board wants to enter into another 25-year agreement to sell recycled water, which may limit our ability to produce direct potable reuse water.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
That'll be part of the study, and we'll talk about those things.
Yeah, and as far as the DPR study, do you have any kind of order of magnitude kind of costs, kind of conceptually?
What the water would cost?
Yeah.
Yeah, my guess it's going to be in the 2,500 range, but James.
So it's going to be comparable to diesel.
I think it'll be in the decel range, maybe a little bit
Okay.
less, but
Right.
we'll see. You know, it's hard to tell when the regulations aren't out there yet. We have some general
Yeah.
guidelines, and we're hoping that the consultant team that we get will probably be like Trussell's, and they're the ones that are helping the state develop all the regulations. So if you get the right people, they may have the inside track on what the regulations are going to say, which will help you get a better estimate of overall costs and cost per acre foot going forward.
All right. Thank you.
All right. If there's no other questions on that one, we'll go to item 4, which is a septage hauling update, and I'll turn it over to James.
Okay. So as the committee may recall, we went forward with the septic hauling study. And in that study, we basically showed that it probably wouldn't pencil out with what the septic haulers are willing to pay. I think they're at 12 to 14 cents. We were at 18 plus cents to do it for us. Then Cedron, a Pacific Northwest company, contacted us kind of out of the blue, and we started going down that path where they could basically provide a septic hauling facility, and they basically produce high quality water out of it. It's not potable water, but maybe could be used as recycled water. So with that, we thought maybe to co-locate it at our MAR site. And this is a picture of a MAR site. Can everybody see just a Google image?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
basically, because it is kind of an industrial looking pump house, it basically looks like a bunch of, it's basically a treatment plant for septage. There'd have to be improvements on site, but we put it down here close to the bottom of the dam where we can. There'd be some earthwork necessary, but it would keep the line of sight from these houses. You have Rancho Santa Fe Road here. And granted, some of these houses across and this new fire station would be able to see it, but it's still sunken down below the road. That being said, we've been actively meeting and discussing with the regional board. So, and kind of, you may recall the last committee meeting, Rob Scholl presented this on. They said that the company, Cedron, was very optimistic, and we would just get a portion. So it'd be zero cost of Vallecitos, and we get a portion to basically allow them the property and the facilities to do this. None of it would go to Encina. They're harvesting basically the solid material and reusing it for other means, whether it's fertilizer or other means. And then there's a little presentation of their technology. I didn't copy that presentation because I don't want to get into that portion of it. The update is, and we suspected this, is they've never done anything in California. So we said, you need to get to the regional board. They went to the regional board, and the regional board says you have to go through a bunch of hoops. They said, can we just do those hoops? And they said, absolutely not. So that's where we are today. So we've had 2 conference calls in the last 3 to 4 months with Cedron Technologies and the regional board. And they're quickly learning that they have to go through all the testing here in California, go through the regional board process. The regional board may kill it completely, to be honest, because I don't believe, and even though we told them that this would be a process that has to go through this type of vetting here in California, I don't think they really believed us, because they were able to do it up in Washington State without such oversight. So I have a conference call coming up, hopefully sometime at the end of this month or early February. And at that point, there'll be a more in-depth discussion with their company to see if this is something they're going to move forward with, because they're just starting to get understanding of what it's going to cost. They got some consulting pricing to help them out with the regional board process. So, and they're supposed to do that all. It was supposed to be done towards the end of the year, but they said it's going to be done in January. So based on that, I'll probably have another update at our next meeting, or maybe the March meeting, depending on the timing. And I'll have hopefully more substantial information on it. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question, James. I've asked a couple of times. Could you send me the cost breakdown for the septage hauling facility at lift station number 1? You talked, we got to 12 cents or whatever.
Yep.
If I could get a copy of that so I could review it.
Yeah, I believe I sent the whole study to you, Director Hernandez, but I'll go ahead and resend that again. I'll go ahead and do that. I'll try and get it to you this week, if not early next week.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, that's all I have. Unless there's any other questions.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I've actually got one question left on the septage hauling. You mentioned that the haulers were looking at they were willing to pay 12 to 14 cents. How was that figure developed? Did you talk to a bunch of different haulers, or just how did that process go?
So that process happened on the greater study that Encina did, that Woodward and Kern did for them, and Woodward and Kern did our study also. So
Okay.
we used their information, and they talked directly to the septage haulers on it. And some of the actual pricing, like in San Diego, is 7 or 8 cents per gallon. So obviously they're willing to pay more, not to have to drive all the way down to pump station number 1 or whatever down to Point Loma. So they figured out. I don't know how much vetting Woodward and Kern did, but I think the basic logic was this is what they could get it for, whether they go further north or further south, and they have to figure out in a cost per gallon of their time and round trip time and expenses. Then it escalates that price, and that's kind of where they landed. I've heard a couple times they may be willing to pay a little bit more, but when we went back with them, or Woodward and Kern went back with them and looked at like an 18 cents number, it got pretty expensive. And a lot of those cost drivers also came when we work with Encina. remote versus man. And he says, hey, if this is going to our system, it's a manned system. So some of those costs that we thought we could kind of break down, and eliminate, it really wasn't possible.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we're ready to move on to item 5.
Yeah,
All right, so item 5 is a urban water management plan contract award. So as the board knows, or as the committee knows, every 5 years, we're required to put together an urban water management plan. This one will be titled the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan, and it's due, I think, like June 30th of 21. So and we're going to be getting a consultant on board to help us with that. So I'll turn it over to James and he'll give you a detailed update.
Sure. Rob Scholl did our urban water management plan in-house in basically 2015. And in 2010, we also did that in-house also. But each time we use a consultant to double check our work, just so we had that extra set of eyes that wasn't directly working for the district in case there were questions. And we used the same staff. Basically, we went out for proposals, used the same staff. But in this case, when Rob announced that he was leaving, I knew that we wouldn't have the ability to do the work in-house. So we went to HDR. And the reason we went to HDR is because the team at HDR reviewed our 2015 urban water management plan for compliance and completeness. And they worked on our 2010, the staff did, working for other companies. They worked on our 2010 urban water management plan. So what I'm sharing here is really their scope and kind of going through it. I'm sorry, I'm going to zoom up a little bit because I'm looking on a laptop screen. Basically, it's the primary goal. You got your regular project management, your data collection review. Obviously, you have the water demand and the water supply. And then you have basically the other statutes of the water management plan. The committee may recall the way it works for us, or really all member agencies, is our plan dovetails off of the county water authorities plan. So the county water authorities plan is actually due on June 30th, 2021 also, but they strive to get it done earlier, which gives us the ability to plug in numbers. So what we do is we prep all of our plans, but we don't have the water supply numbers until the county water authority gives us to them. So we basically have everything done, and then we have to fill in the tables and make some modifications as soon. Right now, there's a committee set up through the San Diego County Water Authorities, and I've been part of that. Rob Scholl is our main member, and now I've taken over. And so we are getting number information that we're feeding to, or we can feed to our consultant. So with that, basically, I knew we needed to get a consultant on board to kind of finish this project up. And I'll be on board, hopefully, with committee support, basically to award HDR to basically perform the whole urban water management plan for $76,900. We went around and kind of did a little bit of shopping around, and about $75,000 was everybody's ballpark number. When I, called several consultants up and asked them what they're paying, and also I checked with OTI Water Authority, and they're paying about $7,000. So because I didn't have, bless you, I didn't have a good feeling for where this would come in since we've been doing it in-house since 2010. So that's why I went and made a few calls to a couple of agencies to see what they're paying, and this is about the ballpark what they're paying. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
okay, any questions?
If I may add real quickly, the committee members and the board may start to hear that there's some controversy surrounding the water authority's numbers. So James mentioned that the water authority produces their document. They pass along some information to us. And a lot of the controversy surrounds this regional conveyance system project. So you remember how controversial that was.
Yeah.
And there's a sense among some of the general managers that the water authority may be inflating the demands to justify the regional conveyance system project. So there's some pushback in the urban water management plan, more than you would normally see, because it's associated with that regional conveyance system project. From what I've had conversations with both James and Rob, and it seems like the numbers that the water authority is putting together for Vallecitos are pretty close in alignment. but the agencies that are really contesting it tend to be the ag agencies, which are also the ones that were heavily contesting the regional conveyance system project. They don't like the water authority's methodology. They don't agree with their projections. They think they're way too high. They think it's kind of self-serving on the water authority's perspective just to justify the regional conveyance. So it would be nice to separate those two, the regional conveyance system and the urban water management plan. But I think they're going to continue to be linked for a variety of reasons. But we'll try to vet through that as we go through the effort with HDR. Just want to give you a heads up in case you see some letters, particularly you, Director Elitharp, in your role down at the Water Authority.
Okay, yeah, thanks for the heads up. Speaking of controversy, with the last, or with our current urban water management plan, we had some controversy with how we represented things, specifically with the Newland Sierra project. How are we going to, I guess the way we showed water supply availability before and after conservation was kind of the controversy. Are we going to consider showing that a little bit differently or showing it more consistently with other agencies?
So we're certainly aware of that controversy. I would say.
So what happened was,
Go ahead, Jim.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
So what happened was we actually got a letter from the state saying we showed it right, and they made a lot of those other agencies change the way they showed it. So normally I'd say we would go ahead and mix those numbers up like the other agencies did. A lot of those other agencies, not all of them, but a handful of them, at least a dozen or so, got letters from the state saying, no, you need to show it correctly. So we're going to work with HDR to figure out the correct way of showing it. But technically speaking, we had no modifications and we got accepted without any modifications, our document.
Yeah.
One of our neighboring agencies were told to modify their water demand tables to not show conservation included because that was in the wrong section. So in a lot of ways, if Rob was here, he'd have a big smile on his face because he was vindicated in the way he showed it, even though he was attacked for it by Newland Sierra. But if we show it again like that, now granted, Newland Sierra won't be a project, so we shouldn't be attacked by it. So maybe a non-issue, but if it is, we still make it. If that's the correct way to show it, we still may get attacked for it that way because it does add confusion when everybody else shows it a different way. So we'll vet.
Technically, it's nice to be right technically, but we need to make sure it's clear. And I think what happened is opponents of a project read through part of our urban water management plan and stopped when they were talking, and they didn't read the rest of it. So even if we keep the format the same, at least the demand portion should reflect that there's other sections of the report that need to be looked at to put it into context.
Yeah, so maybe we can add that clarification to make it a little bit clearer.
Yeah, we'll make sure that HDR is aware of the controversy that was surrounding the Newland Sierra project, even though Newland Sierra may not be in the midst. We don't want to relive that experience.
Right. Okay, thanks.
A lot of footnotes.
Yeah, that's right. All right, so if there's no other questions about the urban water management plan, we'll go into the second quarter CIP update.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Sharing my screen. Hopefully you can see it. Sorry, bear with me. So I will be presenting the fiscal year 2021 quarter 2 CIP update. I'm going to then move on to the San Marcos Interceptor Phase 2 construction update. I'll be giving the committee an update on district-wide solar construction progress. And then I'm going to turn it over to Capital Facilities Engineer Lito Santos to provide an update on the Meadowlark Bioselector Aeration Basin Improvement Project. And to begin, I just wanted to share my screen for a moment. I know we've talked about this before with providing updates to the quarterly updates that are available online to the public. if you navigate to the Vallecitos webpage and get to the engineering department, you'll see capital facilities cog to where you can click on active capital improvement projects. That'll take you to an interactive map with thumbnails available at our different project locations that are ongoing. And if you were to click on San Marcos Interceptor Phase 2, it'd give you a brief description and then a link that would take you to a quarterly update page. And this gets updated every quarter. This being one of the larger CIP projects ongoing right now. It just provides a description, a quarterly update, change order update, and then where we are in schedule, including anticipated construction completion dates. It also breaks down project billing between contractor and any professional services agreements that we have ongoing. This, as I mentioned, is available to the public. It's available at the Vallecitos website, and just wanted to draw your attention to that. That item concludes item 6 on the agenda. Unless there's any questions with that, I'm going to get into the interceptor update.
Okay, any questions from Director Hernandez?
Nope.
All right.
Okay, I'll keep moving. Bear with me. For San Marcos Interceptor Phase 2, in summary, the project is over 50% complete right now. The project has been very productive in the last 3 to 6 months. Most recently, the microtunnel in San Marcos Boulevard at the Pacific Street intersection was completed in the end of December. That, as you'll recall, was a 60-inch diameter microtunnel undercrossing a concrete box culvert that runs diagonally in the intersection. We will finish construction in San Marcos Boulevard around the end of this month or beginning of February. We are coordinating with the City of San Marcos Creekside District Improvement Project on a weekly basis. Both projects are neighboring each other, so we are coordinating to be good neighbors, essentially. The construction completion as it looks today is June 15th, 2021. Some pictures here of interest. The microtunneling cutting head, the microtunnel machine, the excavation at a manhole on Tamarisk Lane, and then the excavation of the trench for the interceptor main line in Tamarisk Lane as well. Just to provide you a quick highlight of the corridor, it runs from Via Veracruz on the creek down to Tamarisk Lane, where it turns northbound up to San Marcos Boulevard, and then it heads westbound just past Pacific Street to our tie-in at manhole number 1. Just more photos here of some of the access pit locations. The middle picture is the receiving pit for the tunnel. The picture on the right is the launch pit of the microtunnel. And on the left there, one of the 60-inch diameter steel casings being flown into the trench.
So, Ryan, the line itself is inserted into the casing, is that correct?
Correct. It's a 42-inch diameter carrier inside of a 60-inch diameter casing.
And then is it the annular space, is that grouted or something?
It is grouted, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Pressure grout, slurry fill. Are you seeing my slides or?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we were.
Yep.
You're seeing that? Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. I'm sorry about this. Let me get to where I need to be.
Yeah, I should have clarified at the beginning of the meeting, everybody's working from home now. Our numbers, COVID numbers were ticking up at work, so we closed down the office for a couple of weeks. So we sent everybody home. So this is the second week of the closure. So people are scrambling. It's a little more difficult working from home. We don't have dual monitors and all the niceties we have at work. So bear with us.
If you can see the nice aerial photograph on your screen right now, It's a 60-inch diameter microtunnel. Just some unique pictures that we captured from drone footage that we were able to get from our contractor. So they flew this, and what you see on the bottom right is the launch pit excavation, and then on the left is our receiving pit excavation. The concrete box culvert runs diagonally through Pacific Street intersection at San Marcos Boulevard here. And then right here, all these yellow boxes are bypass pumping, staging setup. And just for scale of reference, this is the Arby's on the corner. And so just some unique photos I wanted to share with the group.
That's a great picture.
I apologize, my PowerPoint seems to be lagging. These are big image files. Okay, I jumped ahead 4 of them. Sorry, just bear with me one moment. Okay. This is the same vantage point essentially, but kind of brought down in elevation a little bit to see the culvert in better detail, how it crosses and what we are actually undercrossing here. You can see the 60-inch diameter casing on the right there, about to be inserted into the launch pit. This is just a capture of the launch pit and the crew working on the microtunnel operation. The alignment had to change in construction because it looks easy and wide open. We actually encountered a lot of unforeseen utilities, as you might come to expect, in San Marcos Boulevard. So we actually had to modify the alignment a little bit and on the fly to suit our needs and what we were looking at out there. If you see closely, the shoring actually had to be redesigned to support traffic loading. This is a through lane of traffic on San Marcos Boulevard. So the shoring is actually supporting the roadway here, which is pretty interesting. You imagine how noisy that got down there for the workers. This is just another vantage point of that. Also showing how the excavation undercuts the roadway there. We have this drone footage available, and we are going to work with our public relations department to actually put together a video of this, and I'm sure they're going to do a great job. These are just some of the stills that we captured out of that. This is the manhole number 1 tie-in location. This is our furthest downstream tie-in location, just west of Pacific Street. That's the existing clay pipe, the existing interceptor sewer. This is just the same location, but shown cleaned out with the piping removed. You can see our tunnel on the left coming through. That's the tie-in. This is going to be a 10-foot diameter manhole base, which 10-foot diameter is a good size manhole. So that's just providing some visual illustration of the job. It's been interesting. Just a quick update on schedule. We expect San Marcos Boulevard construction completion February of 2021. Obviously, all of this is this year. We will be complete with construction in the creek between McMar and Via Veracruz around May, and then construction complete in June. The board can expect to receive project acceptance in July. Budget is tracking well. We have an $8.5 million project budget in total. Contract value was just over $6.3 million. Our change orders to date are just over 266,000, the majority of which have included the design and construction rework of San Marcos Boulevard undercrossing, the tunnel, which I mentioned, that had to be realigned. We had groundwater issues to deal, additional groundwater issues, dewatering to deal with. And also, as I mentioned, all the unforeseen utilities and additional potholing and other things as well. Our 5% contingency on the project is just over $315,000. So we're working with about a $50,000 buffer right now before we have to come to the board for additional money. Our CMA inspection is just under $500,000 for that professional services. We did request more labor out of them than was originally scoped due to working day and night shifts for a period of time to benefit the project overall and schedule. So we are expecting an amendment there, which will be forthcoming. In total right now, with everything we know, we're just over $7.3 million on the job. So we do expect this number to grow, but should not exceed the overall project budget. Switching gears now, that completes the interceptor update. If there's any questions, I can field it now, or feel free to stop me as I go if anyone has any questions either.
And just to clarify, we're moving into item 8 now on the agenda.
Correct.
Okay, any questions from Director Hernandez?
Nope, nope. I've been out there a couple of times, seen the progress. So yeah.
Great. For district-wide solar, the project is moving forward. Again, we issued them a notice to proceed on December 2nd to begin work at Lift Station 1. So they mobilized immediately, and they've had crews out there working on installing the solar racking, the ballast, and the arrays, as you see in these pictures here in the backyard of LS1. Construction is anticipated to continue through February, or through January, and to finish in February at Lift Station 1. There is amendment number 2 forthcoming from the solar provider, which will extend the commercial operation deadline to a date in March. With that, it's actually not Lift Station 1, which is the critical path on this project. It is the utility service upgrade at the Twin Oaks reservoirs, essentially waiting on SDG&E to complete their work and their design and coordinating with their contractor on that utility service upgrade, at which time we will de-energize the switchgear at the reservoirs for a week, perform the tie-over, and then re-energize. And we're coordinating with water ops with all of that, but actually that is turning out to be the, like, as I mentioned, the critical path item for this project. This solar site at Lift Station does not require a utility service upgrade, so we won't run into the same problem at Lift Station 1 that we're encountering at the reservoir.
Ryan, what's the nature of SDG&E's service upgrade? What do they have to do?
They are providing a upgraded service into the main switchgear there, which require, and I don't know the specifics of what size upgrade we're getting, but I could get that information for you. But it requires essentially not rewiring, but as I mentioned, de-energizing the switchgear and pulling everything out, organizing it, and then landing the new conductors on the appropriate terminals for the solar system, and then re-energizing it. They say it'll take a week max, but in reality, it could take 2 to 3 days. And once they go down, they have to work, as you can imagine, to complete it before they can turn everything back on again. As part of the PPA agreement, they are providing temporary power for us in the form of generators, portable generators they'll bring on site. And that's part of the work we need to do with water ops, is coordinating the shutdown and then the switch over to temporary power.
Ryan, if I may be mistaken, then maybe they already did this. Part of SDG&E's work that was vetted out by Terra Verde, our consultant, which was rolled into the PPA, was upgrading the power lines that go down Twin Oaks to be able to accommodate the load that we'll be generating, because the water authority already has I don't know if it's a power purchase agreement or they own it, but a large photovoltaic facility there already. And then when we add to it, the whole area need to be upgraded. I don't know if that line work has been done or if that's part of it, but I know it's included in our PPA to get that done.
And I think you're right on with that, James. That's part of the work they need to do. Essentially, the system needs to be overhauled because of the solar system that we're installing is of such capacity that they can't just do it's not the NEM, it's the Res BCT, which makes a big difference.
And so, Director Arlethorpe, if that's the case, then they'll be upgrading the actual electrical wires all the way down Twin Oaks Valley to the main junction box. That is, I think, close to the intersection of Deer Springs and Twin Oaks. I don't know exactly where it is, but it's quite a length of upgrade.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
And that completes the lift station 1 solar item, if that's the only question.
Okay, thank you.
And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Capital Facilities Engineer Lito Santos, who's going to provide the biological selector project update at Meadowlark.
Thank you, Ryan. As Ryan mentioned, our next project going into construction is at our treatment plant at the aeration basin, which is highlighted in that yellow box on in the aerial there. The aeration basin basically diffuses air prior to secondary clarifiers, which is just on the right of that yellow box there. Currently, the existing aeration basin panels are no longer manufactured. They're failing to a point that we can't repair them. We have 2 very inefficient basins. One that's moderately operating. Most of our operators right now are skeptical of whether or not we can continue operating this way going into the summer months where our production, our treatment for wastewater is higher than usual. So this is one of our critical projects. The aeration panels are obviously at the end of its life cycle. Back in 2018, we began to study 2 alternatives. One alternative was just to replace the aeration panels in the aeration basins, which you can see on the lower left-hand corner there, and just to replace them with 3 aerobic zones. And then the second alternative, which is the actual picture there on the lower left, with an anaerobic zone, which is a gas mixing zone, one gas mixing zone and 2 aerobic zones. In the anaerobic zone, basically there's greater nutrient removal prior to the secondary effluent treatment, improving efficiency. The second alternative, the bioselector, will reduce the cost of treatment. But like any other alternative, when you have a reduction down the road, the initial cost of that investment is higher. So we completed the study this in 2020, and we advertised the project in October, late October, did a bid opening November, did a bid opening on December 3rd. We received 6 competitive bids, and then brought it to our customers, City of Carlsbad and Liebenhain. As a result, to the competitive bids, the attractive little bit of the bioselector, as well as having a reduction in treatment costs in the future, was very attractive to our customers and to us. So the bioselector will be going forward as a recommendation to the board. We plan to bring this to board award on next week on Wednesday, January 20th. Notice to proceed hopefully in March, go into construction in probably April, May after we get the parts, and then hopefully with the project acceptance in October, finish construction probably September. The fiscal impact is highlighted here in this slide. Overall, we anticipate a budget surplus of $330,000, $100,000. Most of this will be a shared cost to the city of Carlsbad and Olevenhagen, our customers. If James wants to jump in to discuss any of that. No.
Sure. Thanks, Lito. So the aeration portion of the project is for us. We need that to treat our sewers, whether we're making recycled water. It's part of our secondary process. But the biological selector process that Lito alluded to, that is specifically for recycled water. That makes the quality of the recycled water better. We do not need that to create basically secondary effluent that's legally allowed to go to the ocean outfall. So the Liebenheim and also Carlsbad will be actually paying for those improvements, and we'll front the money and then we'll recoup it through our recycled water rates. Working with our finance manager, it's roughly around $10 an acre foot is going to be added to the recycled water cost due to that. Lito, I forgot the difference in actual cost. So of the construction contract, $865,000, is it roughly $400,000? That's the biological selector.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah, so $400,000 of it will be reimbursed through our recycled water rates.
That concludes that project. Did directors, do you have any questions?
No, not for me.
I don't. Thanks.
And I'll just give you a quick update on what's next in capital facilities, in construction at Meadowlark. There's going to be a lot happening at Meadowlark. Specifically, the Headworks Improvements Project is about to receive notice to proceed. And as Lito updated, the biological selector and biological selector aeration basin improvements will proceed in around March. Additionally, there's going to be a tertiary structural rehab project forthcoming, which we are going to try to take out to bid in February. And ORS, odor scrubber #1, replacement project potentially happening as soon as the coming months as well. That being said, a lot of projects which are currently out to bid or in construction are going to wrap up, and we have a backlog of projects in final design, which we will tee up over the course of the next 6 months to get ready to go out to bid and get busy in construction again with those, including the emergency bypass pipeline project, Montiel lift station and force main replacement project, Tres Amigos water line replacement project, the fail-safe Buena Reach rehab project, Las Postas water line, and then the next water tank refurbishment, which will be Sage Canyon. And that just gives a quick overview of what's up next and what we're doing now. If there's any questions related to capital facilities, we'll take those at this time.
Just want to make
All right.
if I could make a brief comment. So Ryan touched on the fact that we're going to have a lot of work going on at Meadowlark, and that's not typical for us. Usually our projects are kind of spread out throughout the district service area. So this puts us more similar to what EWA does. Encino Wastewater Authority often has a lot of projects going on in a very small footprint, and that's challenging. It's challenging just from a space consideration. It's challenging from an operations perspective. And in a COVID world, it's especially challenging because one of the things we're trying to do is enforce social distancing and proper practices. So we're gonna have to be very careful, assuming COVID restrictions last for a while, to make sure that we have our contractors well separated and excluded from other areas of Meadowlark that may affect our operations staff. So it'll be a challenging time, but we've talked a lot about it. We know what we have in front of us. So I know we'll get through it real well. I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention that there will be a lot of shoulders, literally, figuratively bumping into each other out there in Meadowlark.
Well, it sounds like there'll be a lot to present for our engineering committees too. So.
There will be. All right, any questions on those updates, on the CIP updates?
Not for me.
Nope.
Okay, I think we're ready to, so we're doing well on time. I think it's just a little after 4 o'clock. We have 3 items left. The next 2 items have to do with asset management and kind of the broad category. And as we talked about with the board, when we adopted a budget a couple of years ago, that was going to be the future of this organization, really paying attention to asset management. So you're going to hear more and more about it. We're going to be spending more and more money on condition assessment, asset management, and you're going to see more and more of the CIP being populated by projects that were identified as part of the asset management program. So in that vein, Susan's going to talk a little bit about asset management, condition assessment, and I think also talk about a specific project too. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Susan.
Thank you, General Manager Prum. Let me share my screen here and hopefully the PowerPoint will be visible to you. So share screen. There we are. And okay. Hopefully you're seeing the PowerPoint itself and not the application.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, this is a follow-up actually to when we first met back in March of 20. So that was on March 9th. So this is a follow-up on where we are for the asset management program. As a reminder, what are the benefits of the asset management program? Ultimately, the goal is to minimize the total life cycle costs of all of our assets, meeting our service levels, and as General Manager referenced, determining the asset condition, which really is critical to putting our dollars in the right place. And along with the asset condition, we need to assign the risk on a standardized scale so that we can understand what should be worked on first and prioritize that work. Another component of asset management, because asset management is a very comprehensive way to manage your overall assets, is optimizing maintenance. What we're doing on this front is working closely with operations and maintenance, really zeroing in on a lot of the maintenance activities, they information about what they do, recording that against specific assets, and starting to apply failure analysis as well to the day-to-day maintenance of our equipment. Our goal, of course, to minimize those lifecycle costs is the long-term investment and using all that information to improve our decision-making. And here is just another graphic of these same kind of concepts of what asset management does. You'll see right here in the middle, again, knowing the condition, giving the remaining useful life is really critical for us to do asset management. It's really the heart of what asset management is for a water district or for any districts that are really focused on what asset management as a program is different than just regular capital improvement. And the background and where did asset management come from? It's very popular, and actually it's part of the legislation of Canada, Australia, and the UK. It was very significant effort there. Started out in 2004 as a British standard, and all of the water agencies there are required to utilize asset management concepts and principles when they put together their budgets and when they decide what work that needs to be done. About 10 years after that, you can see here, ISO, the International Standard Organization, put in place standards that are based upon the British standards, and it really gives the guidance for what asset management is. There's also guidance manuals from Australia, New Zealand on just the practices of asset management. So here in the United States, the EPA was participating early, as you can see here, 2003, in asset management as a practice, and did start developing a program around that. Water associations, AWA, WEF, and others have also provided guidance documents for us to follow. So again, what is the core of asset management? When we talk about that, ultimately, it's determining our risk. The concept you'll hear a lot is the business risk exposure. So it really is trying to understand where our assets are likely to fail, where should we direct our dollars, how should we invest over the long term, anticipating what will happen in the future with those assets. So have already, and I'll show you in a few minutes here, we're already working on risk scores, utilizing, this is industry standard. What's the likelihood of failure? It's a 1 to 5 score. What's the consequence of that failure? And then that gives you, in this case, it's showed as a pipeline risk score, but it's really just the same thing as a business risk exposure. And the way that we're implementing this and incorporating it into our maintenance system is on every one of our assets, we will have these fields here recording the criticality of the asset, its condition, and then again, the likelihood, consequence, and ultimately a risk score. This will be applied at the asset level. So an asset can be a stick of pipe, can be a pump, whatever piece of equipment it may be. And then we'll have a standardized scale to really understand where our high risk assets are, and they can be prioritized for renewal and replacement. This is we have been, over the last year, we've been working with VNA as a consultant on our asset management plan. And in cooperation with the district, we have determined risk factors for pipelines, likelihood of failure. So as you see here, install age, PSI, break history, other factors that are incorporated and weighted into getting those the likelihood of failure. Similarly, the consequence of failure, factors of consequence are, say if it was a failure would affect traffic or the cost to repair, replace, etc. So this is what we're applying to the pipelines right now. And this is something that will be incorporated into the larger asset management plan. But it's important that as we move forward, we're going to work with the board of directors to come up with workshops to really help refine this, what our factors should be, et cetera, diving deeper into the asset management business processes. So with those two risk factors and the likelihood and the consequence of failure, we've actually, this is with VNA, we've come up with the ductile iron pipes, and this is our risk level of the current ductile iron pipes. A lot of it is based on break history, age, etc., as we showed in that previous slide. You see down here, this San Elijo Hills area, which we know is a problematic area, and it comes up as the medium-high areas that are likely to break and are likely to have failures.
And Susan, really
Yes.
quick, I just want to kind of emphasize Susan's point. So as we go through our asset management plan and start developing it, we'll need to get a consultant on board to help finalize it. But before we really finalize it, we're going to have some workshops. There's going to be workshops with operations to really kind of nail down, our maintenance practices, our critical facilities, and our procedures. And then there'll be a management workshops to kind of figure out the appetite of what and how aggressive we want to move forward with some of these, whether condition assessment or pipeline or full asset management. And then at the end, we're going to have some workshops with the board to bring back to the board basically cost benefits and some decision-making processes of what the board's appetite is to move forward, whether it's condition assessment and asset management. Are those pretty much the workshops that we talked about, or is there any that I missed?
Yeah, right. We're going to work with you, with the board and management, to really zero in on what type of condition assessments we need to be doing going forward, where to put our dollars on that, and understand whether we're going ahead with replacements, et cetera. So yeah, absolutely. Okay, and if you'll recall, this is our roadmap from last year. These percentages have not, I haven't updated these. This is where what we looked like back at the beginning of 20. It's been interesting year, but we have made progress. Again, I haven't updated these percentages, but as you can see, we've worked with VNA to get some of our condition assessments started, looking at remaining useful life, et cetera. So again, as James mentioned, going forward, we really want to get input from the board on where, among all of these items here, where we want to focus our efforts, what's critical path, what should we really be focusing on. So we'll be getting those on the schedule here going forward real soon.
And this is one of the slides and one of the items that we may be bringing back more regularly to the committee to both get a feel and kind of track of how we're doing, and also get kind of a temperature of the committee of you know, where we should push or where we should hold back and what should go to the full board.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Questions on our asset management progression right now?
And I would add to that, Susan, that the board, not just the committee, but the board's going to hear a lot about this as we go into the budgetary process. As I mentioned before, you're going to see a lot of specific projects identified out of asset management, but you're going to hear more about just the topic of asset management. And, you know, I always liken asset management to having a car with a lot of miles on it. And you want that car to keep running. You're not ready to get rid of it. So you're really starting to look into a lot of the mechanical, electrical systems. And to do that takes a lot of money. But in the long run, you hope that it costs less money than waiting for the car to break and go buying a new car. So that's where we're at right now. And I don't want to belabor the point, but it's going to be a recurring theme throughout the engineering committee and the board budget discussions. You're going to hear asset management and condition assessment over and over again. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Susan.
Great. Thank you. Any questions on this?
Director Hernandez, any questions?
I do have a question. The under the perform items, looks like we have 5. I don't know what is that percentages at the top or the number of items?
That's the percent complete as of last year.
All right. And the question, once you go through your matrix, are the ones that end up on the perform section, are they the ones that are most critical, the most likely to fail?
So really what it is, if you look at the subjects that are under perform, it's as we develop our condition assessments and some of our business processes where asset management becomes a regular part of how we function and approach the work that we do, that's when you get to this perform where, for example, analyzing the key performance indicators, continuously monitoring your operational performance. So the green area at the end is where we would expect ourselves to be at the end of this 3-year effort. So this is a progression where we started it in the blue area and we're moving in through right now the orange area.
Yeah, and Director Hernandez, if I could add to that. So out of those areas, the work will come out of it. So there will be identified, hey, you need to keep on maintaining this, or it may not be worth maintaining this. It's time to replace it. Those decisions will be made. Also, hey, this requires less maintenance, or here's a number of pipes that look going to fail within the next couple of years. So you need to get this on the calendar, or here's a couple areas that may fail within the next 6 months. So now this is an emergency project. So those type of things will come out of it. The other thing that comes out of it is kind of a roadmap of what it's going to cost and the burden on the district to replace this infrastructure over a 50, 75 year plus period. So when you look at that, the financial review, this is going to be one of the things that is going to go over to basically it will jump from this committee into the finance committee sooner or later. It'll be one of the metrics that our finance department will use to help shape what our future reserve policies may look like.
Yeah. Okay.
And all this work and all this data is going to lead to some very difficult decisions. We're going to know better the things that we don't know now. And that's good. It's good to know what needs work, but it's going to be expensive and we're not going to be able to do everything at once. So as James mentioned, between the engineering committee and the finance committee and the full board, we're going to have to try to figure out how to prioritize our resources, not just our money, but our staff resources as well, to figure out what needs to be done first. And that's why we do this criticality assessment.
Oh, good. All right, thank you.
Welcome. Okay. I'll go ahead and move on to item 11, which actually is a condition assessment. So it folds right into what we're talking about for an asset management approach to running the district. Okay, so this is for the land outfall west. This is a condition assessment that we took to the group of our as needed consultants last month or November. And we have selected a consultant to assist us with this. But let me just give you a bit of background on what this project is. So the land outfall west, again, is the sewer pipeline that goes between lift station 1 over to Encina. So carrying the majority of the districts over to Encina. And it was installed in 1986. The western segments is ductile iron, and then we have I can't say that word, vitrified clay in part of it, and part of it is pressurized. So this project that we have awarded or will be awarding next week is going to evaluate this pipeline through CCTV inspection to determine the about 1,600 feet of the pipeline, large diameter, 30 to 54 inch. Which has not been assessed or looked at probably for about 20 years. I believe it was looked at when there was some work that was done under I-5 in around 2004. But this will give us an opportunity again to get our eyes on the pipe. It's an inside, looking inside CCTV and some advanced technology of beyond just CCTV to look and get a determination of where we have any weaknesses or other areas of concern along this critical pipeline. The eastern segments of this pipeline was replaced in, I can't see that date because of my screen, 2006. You guys can see that.
Yeah, 2006. And just to clarify, so we're going to really be CCTVing the western side starting at El Camino Real, which is primarily gravity. The eastern side, which we call the east outfall, is like it's roughly an 11,000 foot siphon, and we replaced about half of it. It was one of my first projects when I came to Vallecitos back in 2005. So we know roughly a little less than half of it's new, and the other half is submerged. We replaced the half that was under varying conditions, so it's in the air, exposed to air, or submerged every day. That being said, we'll still have to address that portion later.
Yes. So, and we are hiring a contractor to do this because it's beyond what our regular CCTV work. As you know, we do CCTV, the collection system routinely with our internal crews, but this is not something that they have the capability to do due to the size of the pipe. And again, most importantly, the results of this condition assessment, we will have a report from the consultant, and that will identify areas that need cleaning, rehab, and/or replacement. So it will inform our decision-making with how to manage this pipeline going forward.
And just to emphasize, majority of this pipe we haven't looked at since 1986 when it was first installed. The portion that Susan mentioned in 2004 was the crossing underneath I-5 and several hundred feet east of I-5 that was videoed when we slip lined I-5. So, you know, of 34,000 feet, 11,000 feet of the siphon that we're not doing. So you have roughly 23,000 feet, and maybe we looked at 1,000 feet of it. So that's, you know, 22,000 feet that I'm very anxious and almost afraid to see.
Yes.
You have so little faith.
Yep. So yeah, so it'll be interesting. So we have selected Hope Consulting for this contract. They came in at 149,800,000. So we're pleased with that. They have shown that they have a very good understanding. This is actually from their proposal of the factors that need to be considered as we do this inspection. Again, being a large continuously used pipe through sensitive areas, high traffic areas, and feeding right into the treatment plant, there's quite a bit of coordination that'll need to occur. So this, again, right now, what you're looking at is the area that we're going to be assessing. And I wanted to mention that the cost sharing is in place for this section of the pipe. So Vallecitos has 58.03% of this contract. Carlsbad has had 23.98, and Buena Vista has 17.99. Both Buena and Carlsbad were on the selection committee for the consultant, so we're coordinating with them on this project as it goes through. I think it's completely in the city of Carlsbad, the project itself.
And Susan, that number of 149,000 is the entire project, not just our share, correct?
That's correct. It's the entire contract value. Okay, any questions on this condition assessment? We hope, like I said, we're going to award or take it to the board next week. So hopefully we'll get started. The schedule that Hope gave us has us completing this project by the end of this fiscal year. So by the end of June, we will know what is inside this pipe.
Okay, great. I have a question. Is the line generally in the roadway of Palomar Airport Road?
No.
Or is there a lot of it off-site? Or?
Yeah, a lot of it's offsite. There's a section that jumps off from Palomar Oaks. So it's kind of off the street. What is it? South of Palomar Airport Road, and then off of Palomar Oaks, it jumps into Palomar Airport Road, kind of over by where the 24-hour fitness is, and then it jumps again, and it goes into the easement that goes that's across the street from the Legoland parking lot that's in the Habitat area, and then goes behind Costco. So most of it is actually off of Palomar Airport Road to be.
Okay.
Yep, and then it does traverse under I-5 as well.
Yep.
And
Right.
entering. So we go all the way as it enters into Encina.
Okay.
Great. Then moving on, no other questions. I'll move on to item 12, which is pretty exciting, actually.
All right.
Cool project. James likes it. Okay. Okay, Tesla. Y'all know Tesla?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm not sure if you've been introduced to this project yet, but
Susan, I did a brief presentation at the board on this project. So they've been introduced one time, but expanded. So they haven't known about. They only knew about the two facilities, which is the district headquarters in San Loyo Pump Station.
Okay, great. So you're somewhat familiar then with this program, the California Public Utilities Commission Self-Generation Incentive Program. Started in the early 2000s as part of the energy crisis when they were doing all those brownouts and rolling blackouts. And it is an electric utility ratepayer funded program. So sometimes you'll see where it says ratepayer funded. Just to be clear, this is from ratepayers for the electric utility who are funding this program. And it was initially conceived as reducing the peak load during that time. Then in 2011, California changed the primary purpose to be focused on the greenhouse gas emissions. Most recently, they have repurposed it to be used for providing resiliency to organizations such as ours during the public safety power shutoffs. that they have introduced due to the wildfires the recent events with the wildfires. And so there was additional funding that was put in so that water, wastewater, other critical facilities would have energy backup. So what this is a energy backup program, and we are partnering with Tesla to put this in place at the district. And again, these are the primary purposes of it. It is just to help manage our energy consumption utilizing batteries, peak shaving, load shifting. Our primary purpose for us, again, is the emergency backup and resiliency and demand response. So it is, what it will be is Tesla, the company, will be coming in and installing things called either a power pack or a mega pack. It's basically their battery systems that they will be installing, doing all of the work for us, the installation, the permits, etc. Everything will be provided by Tesla, primarily even with their own contractors or them doing the work themselves, and funded through this program with Tesla really being the company that's helping us make this happen. And where are we able to have this? So we were very fortunate to get in on this and to have these battery backup systems put in at these 6 sites listed here. No, the blue and the red, sorry, we picked those colors, are power pack and mega pack. They're just different types of battery systems, slightly different installation, but generally they're just a different system to Tesla. So again, we went through an eligibility effort and site selection with them over the last 2 months. The criteria was high fire threat, must be a critical facility, which is water, wastewater, and also had to serve disadvantaged or low income communities. So these are the sites, includes the headquarters, and Santa Leo Hill pump stations were originally selected for the power pack. And then we were able to get 4 more sites identified for the mega pack system. So at the Twin Oaks Reservoir pumps, the North Twin Oaks pump station site, Palace Vista, Double Peak, and at Meadowlark also. The Twin Oaks Reservoir, I know we have the solar up there. It won't be tied in, but to the solar because the way that it's configured. But it will still then provide additional backup for that location. And so this program, as I said, it's the electrical ratepayers. We're getting a total value of batteries being donated to VWD through this program of over $6.7 million. So that's significant and gives us resiliency at all of those sites for many years into the future. So again, all the engineering, design, installation, operation, and maintenance costs will be covered by this program for 10 years.
It basically covers everything except for staff, our staff costs, which is pretty minimal on this.
Yep. Tesla is going to perform the maintenance themselves during this 10 years. And we anticipate, although it is primarily for resiliency, we do, Tesla calculated that they anticipate a 10-year energy cost savings of over 1.6 million.
Yeah, and just to clarify that's on today's rate. They didn't escalate it. So if the rates go up, that number changes, but they just basically just did a straight line.
Yep. And with these batteries, if we need to do pumping during the day when the rates are higher, we can have battery storage, utilize the energy in the batteries. And the batteries, although this is a 10-year program, the batteries themselves do have a useful life of 20 years. So we anticipate this being functional for 20 years. After the 10-year period, we have options what we can do with those batteries. Certainly, recycle them back to Tesla, which again is at no cost to the district. We could sell the batteries, work with Tesla to continue to maintain them, or assume maintenance of those ourselves. And here are specs and the financials for this. Again, as I mentioned, battery value, and this is just the battery value. This is not all of those additional costs that are being incurred, which we're not paying. So 6.7 million of batteries. This is your battery rating. You see here from a perspective of resiliency, based upon the energy draw of the facility, you know, how much duration of energy backup we'll have. So when we had, the district had that outage about a month and a half ago, this again would have been something that we would have been able to rely upon for quite a few hours of backup time.
Yeah, and keep in mind that when we have existing backup systems that still work. So when if and when the batteries were to be drained, then our normal on-site generator or roll-up generator system works. So we don't give up any resiliency or backup system that we already have.
And again, some cost savings if we utilize the batteries for purposes of utilizing lower cost energy during nighttime, et cetera. Okay, so that's the effort with Tesla. We're actually starting site surveys with their contractors next week at those 6 locations. I'm not sure when the project will be completed, probably pretty quickly. But yeah, questions?
Yeah, and really quick before we get into questions. So we are basically, there's a placeholder for us in the grant funding. It's not a done deal yet, so it's being reviewed. When the grant gets approved, which may still take another 30 to 90 days or whatever they said, then we'll know for sure whether those projects are going forward. Meanwhile, if it doesn't get approved, we don't incur any costs. So the effort that Tesla's put in, they don't come back and charge us for. And so as we get the projects approved, we're going to let General Manager Pruitt know, and then he could update the board, most likely during the GM updates, that this project is moving forward full with the battery system from Tesla. And so when that starts trickling in, we'll go ahead and inform the general manager or the committee, whichever is more prudent at the time.
And the 6 sites are independent as far as requesting that grant funding. So we might proceed with one site, maybe not another, but they're independently evaluated.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And literally, the December 31st was the deadline to get this in, and the money was running out probably a week before December 31st anyway. And we worked, and Susan did a great job, basically shouldering the burden of trying to get all the information Tesla wanted to get this into them, so this way they could get it in before the deadline. So if there's money left, depending on how many people came in. It sounds like a lot of money, but there was only $16 million left. But there were agencies all over the state or all over the SDG&E service area. There's 16 million in the SDG&E service area left when we reported to the board about our first 2 sites. And there was, dozens of agencies trying to get this money all at the same time. So it's just first come, first serve. So we're in, our application is being reviewed. We just hope there's money left for it. We know that we're going to get some, at least the first 2 sites for sure. We just don't know about all the other sites. But again, we'll update the board and the committee once we get confirmation.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this is a big deal. This is a pretty cool program, and kudos to Susan and James. They did a really, and their team, they did a really great job, not just pursuing it, but identifying the opportunities in the first place. So thanks, guys. I appreciate that.
Never thought being in a fire zone would be beneficial.
Yeah.
Yeah, so James, I think the PUC had like 300 million or so in this total,
Yeah,
something like that.
So
they were down to you said they were down to 16 million by December.
Yeah, so the way Tesla explained it to me, and Director Arthur being part of that energy group, you may know better than I do. There was a large sum of money, and some of it came out of the litigations with the state, with the different agents, with the different electric providers from the fires, and it was divided based on use area. So there's only $1 billion allocated for the SDG&E service area of the total. PG and Edison got the lion's share in the state. So there was 1 billion in the SDG&E area, and by the time we got our first two projects in early December, there's only 16 million left.
Right.
And you can see our
Yeah,
project.
it's a great program.
Yeah. And Susan didn't have the full number because she gave you the battery value. But just to give you an idea, I think our headquarters total reimbursement was over $2 million. And the battery for our headquarters was, can you go back to that slide for a second? So the battery for our headquarters was only 866,000. But with the installation and all of Tesla's costs, it was roughly a $2 million project, or maybe it was 1.8 or something, roughly around there. So our $6 million in total reimbursement from the grant is closer to $10 million.
Great.
So that's all we had today. That's all. It was a lot. It was 12. Kudos to staff for moving all those items through, and thank you for the committee members for your patience and indulgence for getting so many items on an agenda. We will be scheduling monthly meetings. I'll try to pick like the third Monday of the month, something like that, just so it's easy to remember, from 3 to 5. If either of the committee members has a particular item you'd like us to put on an agenda, always feel free to forward it to myself, and we can add that on the agenda as well. So
Okay.
with that, is there anything else you'd like us to cover while you have us?
No, I don't think so. How about you, Director Hernandez?
Yeah, I did want to ask about our meeting on Friday. Are we going to get together before the 4 o'clock hour to review where we're at with the documents back and forth?
Yeah, so my suggestion is I'm probably gonna be setting up a closed session later this week before
Oh.
the Friday meeting with the County Water Authority.
Okay, great. All right. I'll be ready.
All right, well, thank you, staff. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it, and thank you, committee members. That's all we
Yeah.
have.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to thank staff for all the great information. It's especially hard to do it from home, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And
Yes.
it was well done. All the presentations were excellent and very informative. Thank you very much. Great job.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Thank you, board members, and to my staff. You guys did awesome.
all right.
Thank you.
All right. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.